I recently gave a keynote speech on how we heal from racial trauma. And it's interesting because when I have spoken at various events, inevitably there is someone in the room who will stand up or talk to me afterward and say, race is a social construct. It's not real. And talking about race and racism further divides us. We are more alike than we are different. And typically it ends with a statement, I don't see color. Or from certain members of my faith community, God loves us just the same. There is no race, only the human race. I get it. It's true. God loves us. He sees and knows us, and we are made in his image, and he knows this. And we are all biologically the same on the inside. Yet I have a differing perspective. And the work that I do through my curriculum, Skin Deep, the history of child welfare by race, I challenge organizations to discuss history, impact, and current experiences. And when we talk about experiences in America, typically we talk about it from the perspective of how white children and white families have experienced it. Even the historical memory of our nation discusses golden eras and these good times and when America was great. And it gives me pause because if we look at any other racial group, America has always excluded and included individuals based upon race and national origin. And in our laws, we see the impact of specifically race and national origin. And so to now act as if it's something that we can't talk about and we can't ponder and we can't look at the impact and the current experiences is disingenuous because we just want to talk about all of the beauty. Because if we just talk about all of the beauty, if we just act as if there aren't hard parts to the story of America, then we're missing out on what could be and what should be and what will be for so many families. There's beauty in every community. There's beauty in every culture, but there's also hard things that we've all experienced. And so when I talk about race and when I talk about racism, I have to go back to our founding documents. I have to start with the Declaration of Independence, the idea that people have an innate desire to be free. And then I go on and I talk about the Constitution of the United States and what that structure is. And then I go in and I dive into the amendments and I talk about some of my favorite amendments, which are the Civil Rights Amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. We have the idea that when something becomes law or when something becomes a constitutional amendment or when the Supreme Court makes a decision that it's that way forever. But that's not true. Our laws, our amendments, our rulings, they have to be defended and they have to be reviewed and they have to be challenged. And that's what happened regarding the 14th Amendment, which is a really important constitutional amendment. It has many things in there, but one of the things that it has in there is the birthright citizenship. And just a few years after it was passed, it was challenged. And I believe that it was challenged in a unique way. The challenge was essentially this Chinese-born American can't possibly qualify for American citizenship. We know he was born here, but he's Chinese, and his parents don't qualify for citizenship. So how is it that he's able to be a citizen? I mean, he's Chinese after all. And the court said it's simple. If he was born here, he is a citizen. And so it really bubbles up to the surface the concept of othering. This can't possibly apply to them. This law can't possibly be for everyone. And so you may think that we have inhumane immigration enforcement issues now. I want you to look up the Repatriation Act of 1935. It's a period of time when the slogan was real jobs for real Americans. The idea that Mexicans were taking all of our jobs, and in order to fix it, we needed to round up all of the Mexicans and repatriate them, basically deport them back to Mexico. But the issue was over 60% of the Mexicans that were taken were legally able to be in the United States through citizenship or some other legal status. 60%. This also meant that some people who had never lived in Mexico were forced to live in a place that was never home. And the absolutely insane thing about this is that not even 10 years later, the United States government begins operating a program with Mexico called the Bracero program, which brought millions of workers from Mexico, Mexican workers, from 1942 to 1964 to work specifically in the agricultural and the railroad industries. Millions. 4.6 million. And it was the largest guest worker program in U.S. history. We have to continue to talk about how families of color have been treated here and what that has meant. And so then I typically move on and I talk about what happened directly after the abolishment of slavery in 1865, because many people, again, have the false belief that just because the 13th Amendment was passed, which abolished slavery and indentured servitude, that all is well. But the law did not spring into action. And many former slave owners were actually stealing children. And they were claiming that their mothers weren't able to care for them and that they were not quote unquote slaves anymore, but were apprentices. And so this underlying belief that Black women couldn't care for their children was something that Black women rejected wholeheartedly. And they began to sue for their children back. And they were winning in court. The Freedmen's Bureau had to issue circulars and notices in newspapers saying, essentially, stop taking Black women's children, like the Freedmen's Bureau. So this administrative body that was set up to basically be the application, be the policy, be the administrative arm of the abolishment of slavery had to step in many times and give notice that you can't just take Black women's children. So I bring to light these experiences of other communities because other experiences matter. But oh my goodness, it can get heavy. It can feel heavy at times. And so the way that I have structured the Skin Deep curriculum is really telling the story of how America has treated families through 20 distinct historical events in history, through our laws, through our policies, through world events. And it can feel both scary and humbling to know that the law that I honor and respect and love has been used for both good and evil. And so I know that that is why, on a very human basic level, I appreciate the law, I trust the law, but my faith is what leads, guides me, and reminds me of who we all are in God's image. And we are wonderfully and beautifully made. And when we lose that, when we begin to make policies and procedures and processes that seek to make sure that we're okay and that everyone else isn't, it's wrong. And so whenever there are systems in place that work to dehumanize folks through paternalistic oversight, through judgments, and through blame, it's a system that has to be changed. I challenge those who work with families to examine your laws. Look at the policies, which all policies are is a way that the organization can operationalize the law. And then look at your practices, which is the policy in action, to understand the impact that all families are actually experiencing. Is it work? Yes. Is it important? Yes. Is it imperative? Yes. Because bias, racism, bigotry, and skewed perceptions are real, and they exist in the highest office of the land. Why do we think that they don't exist in our family and child welfare systems? But I never want to leave you on a low. There is something that you can do, and I call it developing eyes to see, ears to hear, and hands to do. There are rooms that only you enter. You have these discussions. You understood what's being said and what's not being said. And how can you make sure all families have what they need to thrive without bias and bigotry entering the picture? What questions can you ask that uncovers what is really happening? How can you be brave in the moment and center what's right versus what's comfortable? The program that I offer, Skin Deep, the History of Child Welfare by Race, and specifically for organizations, which is called Going Deep Together, seeks to make race easy to talk about and racism impossible to ignore. There's a quote that Michelle Obama shared that I find so inspiring. And it says, "You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once. But don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own." As I ended the keynote on how we heal from racial trauma, I shared that we heal through honest reflection. We know our history and we don't normalize bigotry and bias. We heal through collective and shared action. We heal through joy, and we heal by resting but never quitting. I will include a link in the show notes to the Skin Deep website where you can go online today and have access to the Skin Deep online and on-demand course. And if you're interested in your organization going deep together, which is the name of the workshop, reach out and let's have a conversation on how you can begin having an intentional discussion about making race easier to talk about and racism impossible to ignore in the family and child welfare system that you're serving.